She only wanted to withdraw $500 from her own account, but the white bank manager called security just because she was black. What happened next when her billionaire husband walked in shocked the entire bank. I never imagined pulling out my own money could turn into a public trial of my worth, but that's what it felt like. Standing in the middle of a marble bank lobby, surrounded by silence and stares, as a white woman in a power suit sized me up and decided I didn't belong. My name is Alina Monroe, and this is the story of how a trip to the bank shattered something inside me, then stitched it back together with something stronger. It was a Wednesday. Cool breeze. Late October. I'd planned a quiet day. Get some groceries. Swing by the farmer's market. Maybe pick up a small bouquet like Mommy used to. Nothing extravagant. Just a normal day for a black woman who loved her home, her husband, her peace. I'd done the math in my head over breakfast. $500 would more than cover it. I slipped on my denim jacket, pulled my curls into a bun, and left the house with that calm kind of energy you carry when you're not expecting to be seen. But the world saw me that day, just not the way I hoped. The Hamilton Reserve Bank sat like a fortress downtown. White stone walls, gold-trimmed doors, the kind of place where you whisper and never wear sneakers. But I'd banked there before. No trouble, no fanfare. Until today. The teller smiled, but it faded fast when I asked for withdrawal. $500, I said, softly. She blinked, paused, then disappeared into the back. I waited, calm at first. Thought maybe it was a new policy, or a machine glitch. But then she returned with someone else. And that's when everything changed. She walked in like she owned not just the bank, but every black soul who dared step inside it. Her name was Catherine Elwood, branch manager, blonde, iron posture, diamond earrings that could blind a man. She didn't smile, didn't ask my name, just looked me up and down like I was a mess she'd been sent to clean. "You're trying to withdraw $500?" she asked. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp, laced with the kind of poison that's hard to describe unless you've tasted it before. I need it for groceries and home supplies. I replied. She tilted her head, like that math didn't add up. "For someone in your circumstances, that's a considerable amount," she said. That pause, that emphasis, circumstances. Like my skin tone had a dollar limit. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. Every eye in the lobby now glued to me. People stopped pretending they weren't listening. This wasn't a transaction anymore. It was a scene. I held out my ID. The funds are mine. The account is mine. But she wasn't looking at my ID. She was looking at me. "There are irregularities," she said. Her voice lifted now, louder, so the whole lobby could hear. "Multiple deposits. Unusual patterns. We have to investigate possible fraud." Fraud. The word slapped the breath out of my lungs. And suddenly I wasn't a woman anymore. I was a problem. A file. A potential threat. I stood frozen, my ID still in her hand. Like proof of my existence meant nothing here. "Ma'am," Catherine said, her tone clipped and commanding. "I'll need documentation. Employment verification. Pay stubs. A source for those deposits." "For $500? I stared at her, stunned. That's not standard practice. But she wasn't listening. She wasn't talking to me. She was performing. For the crowd now circling, watching the spectacle of a black woman being handled. I could feel it. The quiet delight some folks take in seeing someone like me put in her place. That I should have shouted. Demanded justice. Called for a supervisor. But I knew how this game worked. One raised voice from me, and I'd go from suspicious to dangerous. "Security," she called. And just like that, I was no longer a customer. I was a disruption, a threat, a stain on their marble floor. The guard came slowly, didn't speak right away. A tall man, maybe early 50s. Sad eyes, hands that had done this too many times. "Ma'am," he said gently, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." I looked at him, really looked, and I saw it, the quiet apology in his expression. But even he wouldn't stand between a white manager and her certainty. So I did what black women have done for centuries. I swallowed the storm inside me. I picked up my purse, and I walked out with a grace they tried to strip from me. Outside, The wind felt sharper. My chest ached. I pulled out my phone and dialed Marcus. My husband. My peace. But it went to voicemail. I stared at the bank's windows, fighting the tears stinging behind my eyes that I wouldn't give them the show they wanted. But Lord, it hurt. Then a sound, low, smooth, powerful, the unmistakable purr of a luxury engine. I turned, and there it was, a black Bentley, gliding to the curb like royalty. The driver's door opened and out stepped my husband. Marcus always looked sharp, tall, deep brown skin, a calm force in every room. But today, he looked carved from stone. Tailored suit, watch shining beneath his cuff, and in his eyes, fury wrapped in love. He took one look at me and knew. "Kina," he said, his voice low. "Who touched you?" I broke. The manager, she threw me out, said 500 was too much for someone like me. His jaw clenched, and without another word, he took my hand and turned toward the doors I had just been pushed from. Not storming, not shouting, just walking with the kind of authority that doesn't need permission. The lobby didn't look the same anymore. Same marble floors, same chandeliers. But now, every head lifted the moment Marcus walked in. You could feel it, that shift in atmosphere when power walks into a room. Without raising its voice, he didn't have to announce himself. They felt him. We reached the same counter. The same teller who watched me crumble now looked up with wide eyes. "Can we speak with your branch manager?" Marcus asked, polite but firm. Before she could answer, Catherine Elwood emerged from the back. Maybe she heard the hum of the Bentley. Or maybe she felt her grip on the narrative slip. She froze the moment she saw him. "And Mr. Monroe?" she stammered. I wasn't aware that... You weren't aware that the black woman you humiliated outside was my wife. Marcus said it gently, but his words hit like thunder. Silence, not just between us, but across the entire bank. People leaned in. Phones lowered. Everyone listening. "There was a misunderstanding," Catherine began, her voice cracking beneath the weight of what she'd done. Marcus stepped closer. Calm, dead calm. "You accuse my wife of fraud," he said, "for asking for $500. It was protocol, no." He cut her off, steady. "It was profiling. Let's not dress racism in policy." Catherine blinked, cornered by the truth. I didn't know who she was. And if she'd been someone else, someone not tied to wealth or influence, you have still dragged her dignity across this floor. Every syllable echoed off marble. I looked around. No one moved. No one breathed. Even the guard from before had lowered his head. "You made her feel less than human," Marcus continued. "And in case you've forgotten," he added, locking eyes with her, "my name is on every one of the 7 accounts this branch manages, including the one that pays your staff." Gasps. A whisper across the room. Catherine paled. I can fix this," she whispered. "No," he replied. "You will face it." He turned to the stunned crowd. "This is what everyday racism looks like," he said. Dressed in a blazer, hiding behind a desk, deciding who's suspicious based on skin tone and simplicity. Catherine's hands trembled now. Gone was the ice-cold poise. In its place stood a woman unraveling. Not because she was sorry, but because her power had finally met a mirror. "I didn't mean to offend her," she muttered. "But you did," Marcus replied. "And it wasn't just offense. It was degradation masquerading as policy. You threw her out as if her presence polluted your lobby." Her mouth opened, closed. Nothing came out. The crowd? Still watching. But now I wasn't visible. I was the reason they were listening. Marcus reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a card, black, embossed, heavy. "This is the number of our legal counsel," he said calmly. "We'll be closing every account by end of day. Payroll, investments, corporate capital. Gone." Her lips quivered. "Please, there has to be another way." "No," Marcus said, stepping back toward me. "There was another way the moment you saw my wife, and chose to see a threat instead of a person." Then he looked at me, softness in his eyes now. "Kina," he said gently, "you ready?" I nodded. That MY voice didn't tremble this time. More than ready. We turned hand in hand and walked toward the doors again, but not like before. I wasn't small this time. I wasn't broken. I walked like a woman who remembered her worth. Just before we stepped out, Marcus paused, turned back. "Oh, and Catherine," he said over his shoulder, "that $500 you refused to release? She could have withdrawn $50,000 if she'd wanted." The lobby gasped, not because of the number, but because now they saw the truth. She hadn't profiled a poor woman. She had profiled a powerful one, and in doing so, lost everything. The moment we stepped outside, the autumn sun hit my face. But this time it didn't sting. It warmed me, like truth, like justice finding its way back home. I exhaled slowly, and for the first time in an hour, I felt seen. Marcus squeezed my hand gently. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "I will be." But inside, I was still sorting through the wreckage. Because no matter how powerful the ending was, the pain of being judged for the skin I was born in doesn't fade in a day. Behind the glass doors, people still watched. Some in shame, some in awe, some just curious. But Catherine was nowhere near them. She sat alone now behind her frosted office glass, head in her hands, surrounded by stunned employees, who had once mirrored her silence. That image stayed with me. Not because I felt satisfaction, but because I'd once believed people like her couldn't be broken. Now I realized the real power isn't in revenge. It's in the reminder. That woman would never forget my face. She'd never forget how she lost millions not to a lawsuit, but to her own assumption. And that's the kind of lesson even diamonds can't pay to undo. Marcus opened the car door for me. The Bentley's leather seat cradled my body like safety itself. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let my breath settle. "What do you want to do now?" he asked, turning the key. "Honestly," I said, "buy groceries. And maybe the prettiest damn flowers the city's ever sold." We drove through the city with the windows cracked. The fall breeze slipped in like a hymn, soft against my skin. Marcus didn't say much. He knew. Sometimes healing comes in silence. I stared out at the traffic, the cafes, the people rushing by, and wondered how many women like me had been quietly pushed out of places they paid to belong in. How many had no one walking behind them? How many had to carry the weight alone? We stopped at a flower shop on Main. Same one I'd planned to visit before the bank. This time, I didn't walk in with hesitation. I chose the boldest bouquet I could find. Roses a color of fire, lilies that stood tall like queens. The kind of flowers that didn't whisper, but declared themselves. The clerk smiled, no questions, no doubt. She just said, "These are beautiful. Special occasion." I smiled back, something like that. And for the first time that day, the ache in my chest loosened. We ate lunch at a small patio cafe. Marcus made me laugh, like he always did. But I noticed the way his hand never left mine, like he still carried part of what I'd endured, as if to say, "Your burden is mine now, too." Later, as the sky deepened into gold, we sat in the parking lot of our new bank. The staff knew my name here. They smiled with their eyes, and when I asked to withdraw the same $500, they gave it to me in a silk envelope. No questions asked, no judgment, no circumstances. Just service, just respect. 3 months passed. Seasons shifted. But something about that day at the bank, the shame, the fury, the way my voice had caught in my throat, it never really left me. It lived quietly in the background of every interaction, in every clerk's glance, every pause before a smile, every time I pulled out my ID and felt the shadow of doubt where trust should have been, until one afternoon, something unexpected arrived in the mail. A cream-colored envelope, no corporate logo, no typed address, just my name, written by hand in blue ink, careful, nervous handwriting. Inside was a letter, on plain stationery. No title, no branding, just her words. "Dear Mrs. Monroe." The letter was from Catherine Elwood, not Manager Elwood, not Hamilton Bank, just Catherine. And it began not with excuses, but an apology. She wrote of her upbringing, how her world taught her to trust wealth, but to fear what didn't wear it openly. She said my eyes haunted her, not because I'd yelled or cursed her out, but because I didn't. Because I walked out quietly with dignity and let the silence speak for me. She had been demoted, transferred to a satellite office in a different city. She called it the humbling of her life. She wrote, I realized I knew nothing about the people I was supposed to serve, that I mistook control for respect. And I judged your worth by your clothes, instead of the calm strength in your voice. I didn't know what to feel. Pity? Relief? Satisfaction? But I read it again, and something inside me softened. Because the truth is, I didn't want her ruined. I just wanted her to see me. To see women like me. To see all the daughters of dust-skinned Mother Suovie had to make themselves small just to exist in peace. I never replied, but I didn't throw the letter away either. It rests in my desk drawer, beneath some old postcards and recipes Mama passed down. Because while it didn't undo what happened, it meant something. Not just to me, but maybe to the woman Catherine might become next. A week later, Marcus and I were invited to a diversity roundtable at the bank that had since earned our business, that they'd heard our story, wanted us to speak to their team. At first, I hesitated. What could I say that hadn't already been screamed by 1,000 others who were never heard? But Marcus said something that stuck. Not everyone listens when we raise our voices. Some only hear us when we whisper with power. So I spoke, not as a victim, but as a witness to what happens when assumption becomes policy, and power forgets to see the human being standing in front of it. I shared my story, my silence, my pride. I told them what it felt like to be followed, not by security, but by eyes that questioned if I belonged. And as I spoke, I saw heads lower, pens pause, hearts soften. It wasn't a revolution. IT wasn't fireworks, but it was real, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel invisible. I felt heard. Some people think justice comes like thunder, loud, shaking walls, rattling windows. But I've learned it often arrives quieter than that. Sometimes it walks beside you. Sometimes it's the way your name is spoken without hesitation. Sometimes it's a handwritten letter in the bottom of a drawer from a woman who once erased your dignity and somehow found her own in the wreckage. Since that day, life hasn't been perfect, but it's been rooted that I walk into rooms now with a different posture. Not because I expect apology, but because I know who I am long before anyone else decides if I belong. The bank we chose after that ordeal, they greet me by name. They ask about my garden. They remember Marcus's favorite tea. They treat every withdrawal, no matter how small, like it matters. Because it does. Because people matter. One day, I asked a young teller there, what made you choose this job? And she said, because I wanted people who look like my grandmother to feel safe when they handle their money. That answer? It made me smile in a way that started deep in my chest. Sometimes I drive past Hamilton Reserve, the old one, the scene of it all. The building still stands. But something inside it feels emptier, like it lost something sacred that day. Something you can't rebuild with granite or gold trim. And maybe that's the point. Every so often, I think of Catherine, not with bitterness, but with a complicated sort of grace. She lost her title, her seat of power. But maybe, just maybe, she found something more useful, a mirror. I don't know where she works now. Maybe a smaller branch. Maybe a role with fewer marble columns and more eye contact. I hope she's listening better. I hope she doesn't need a Bentley to respect the next black woman who walks in. As for me, I never needed the $500 that day. What I needed was to remember that silence can be powerful, but it's not the same as peace. That day wasn't about money. IT was about value. And now, more than ever, I know mine. I still buy flowers on Wednesdays. Bright ones, big ones, the kind that take up space. Like I do now. So if you're reading this and you've ever been made to feel small by a room that wasn't built for your skin, let me tell you something. You don't have to yell to be heard. You don't have to be rich to matter. You don't have to explain why you're standing where you stand. You deserve to be there. And you don't need a man in a Bentley to prove it. But if one shows up anyway, make sure he brings flowers. The biggest ones in the city.